Welcome back to the Mail Right Show. My name is Robert Newman, and we are here with episode number 293. Today, we are lucky enough to be meeting with Stephen Ross, and Stephen Ross is the anti-real estate agent. He is incredibly successful. He's been an agent for many years. He's recently written a book about how he does not have to work nights or weekends, and how you can't even find him online. He's going to share a little bit about his book, which contains the information that how he does what he does without being a typical real estate agent. So without any further ado, Stephen, if you would do us a favor and share a little bit about yourself with our audience.
Awesome. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for that introduction. It's awesome to be here. Thanks for having me. And again, I just want to start off by saying or acknowledging 293 episodes. Man, hats off to you guys, because right, it's hard to show up week in, week out. And so I just want to acknowledge, right, it really takes something. And thank you for having me on. And, you know, that's really is the journey of real estate, which is really the journey of being successful at anything, is showing up time after time. And when I got into real estate 17 years ago, March 15th, 2005, I got my license. My third child was born 6 weeks later, my daughter. So I had 3 kids to feed. I'm now in commission only. And maybe not the best idea. Maybe not the best idea. But I left the corporate world. I left a medical startup. And now here I am, commission only. And as you alluded, right, I am the worst person to be a real estate agent. I'm an introvert. I don't do parties or events. I don't do open house. I'm not online. You could even say I'm antisocial, right? In a business that's all about perceived, at least, being social. And so I had to figure out, how the heck am I going to feed these 3 stinking kids, right, in a commission-only business when I don't want to do what's required, using air quotes again, to be successful. And somehow I ran into a real estate coach. He said, knock on heads, knock on doors, pick one. I thought, dude, seriously, knock on doors? Like, I'm a UCLA grad. I've worked on Wall Street. Knocking on doors, like, that's for like vacuum cleaning people and, you know, pest control. And, you know, I'm not knocking on doors. But a few months into the business, I was going to fail if I didn't talk to more people. And so I found a way to start this knocking on door thing. And, you know, 17 years later, here I am, still here.
Wonderful. Well, listen, I want to circle back around. I have an infinite number of questions, having knocked on quite a few doors myself throughout the course of my career. But before we get into that, I would like to introduce my amazing co-host. John is a serial entrepreneur. He is the master of this particular podcast. He's the person that is behind the scenes making everything happen for the Mail Right podcast. He also happens to have he has not one startup, but 2. One of his 2 startups is focused in the real estate space and helping agents who are just getting into the business or in the first few years of their business being successful using Facebook and CRMs and quite a few other things. But without any further ado, John, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners and our viewers?
I don't need to. You did such a great job. So I'm just going to keep it sweet and simple. I'm the founder of Mail Right. We help you build your real estate business without door knocking. But I just love Stephen's prior conversations about his book. And you are the total opposite of a lot of the things that we plug on this show. So I just thought, you'd be a great guest, Stephen. So back to you, Robert.
My name is Robert Newman. I am a real estate SEO specialist. I've been doing it for 14 years. I'm one of only a couple of guys in the US that focuses on search engine optimization. And usually I focus on longer term strategies that have a much higher ROI than the short-term strategies that are rife throughout the real estate industry. But if you want to know more about how to market with postcards or how to do SEO or anything else, just go to inboundrem.com. And I've got, I think at this point, close to 100 articles on there. And you can learn everything you need to know. So having, without any further ado, Steve, at one point in my career, I ran canvassing crews for a company called ADT, and I've had the great pleasure of knocking on quite literally thousands upon thousands of doors and being responsible for people knocking on even more doors. So you're doing door knocking for real estate. I'm going to throw you a curveball. If somebody answers the door, how do you introduce yourself to them?
Well, great. So here's what's, and I will answer that, but here's the thing to get about, here's what I learned very early on. Here's what's happening when I'm knocking on someone's door. Number one, I'm trespassing. Number two, I'm interrupting them because we did not have a scheduled appointment. And I learned early on that the old scripts didn't work so well in terms of creating a relationship. Because also, what's also true is that the odds of someone moving the day I knock on their door, pretty low. And this is again after my experience of knocking on over 125,000 doors. So the very first thing I do when someone opens the door is I'm usually, we can get into all the semantics, right? I'm stepping back, I'm turned a little sideways, I'm dressed professionally. And the first thing I'm doing is saying, hi, I'm Steven, the realtor. I don't use my last name. I don't use my company. It's a smile. I'm Steven, the realtor. And then they're like usually startled. And then they say, hello. And I say, well, hi. And by the way, usually, because I go out at the same time every day, I'm usually out between 11, 11:30 and 2. Half the people that come to the door are eating lunch. So they come to the door in mid-bite. And so I say, after I say that, I say, it seems like I caught you right in the middle of lunch. Is now a bad time? And they say one of two things, yes or no. And I say, well, and either, regardless of what they say, I say, well, what I have to say will take less than 2 minutes. And they usually, more often than not, will say, go. And so they've now just given me permission to talk to them. And then I say, I acknowledge what's likely true. You probably don't have any real estate plans this year. And they go, yeah, that's right. And then I say, well, and you probably haven't been following the market very closely, or, you probably don't have any questions about the real estate market. And then they say, that one, they usually can go either way, but, usually they say, yeah, not really. And I say, well, great. Well, I'm not here to sell your home. I come by a couple times a year and I drop off a market update. And I, would you mind if I handed one to you? I always say, no, go right ahead, hand them the market update. And by now I have a pretty good sense of whether they still want to talk to me or not. And if they want to talk to me, I have, I can go a bunch of different ways. And if they don't, I say, hey, thank you so much. Have a great day. See you next time. And off I go to the next door. So I'm only looking for people who want to talk to me. I'm not trying to convince, I'm not selling pest control. I'm not selling cable services. I don't need everyone to like me at every door. I'm trying to find the people who are open to talking to me and creating a relationship. That's what I'm doing at the door. Gotcha. That's probably more than you asked for.
No, actually, you went the direction that I was hoping that you would go. I'm sure, Stephen, with all of your experience, you've probably heard of a guy by the name of Brian Tracy, right?
I have.
Okay, so there's many, many different sales trainers out there, but Brian did something in one of his books many years ago that I really liked, where he coined the term 5-touch system. Now, it's been around forever, but basically 5-touch is where you have a prospect and you touch them 5 times. And John alluded to the fact that we talk almost exclusively about digital marketing on this podcast. And that's true. But to say that these traditional methods of selling somebody something or marketing something don't work is absolutely false. Door knocking works, postcards work, telemarketing works. They all work. It's just a matter of how you apply them. And what I love about door knocking is it's a very powerful first touch. And what you're saying is exactly what I would advise people to do, which is there's this traditional vacuum cleaner sales thing that says you have to convince somebody to do something when you're at their doorstep. I hate that. You give a sentence, you let somebody know what you do, you add one single line of value, and then you take their temperature. That's always what I taught my teams to do. And if the temperature was bad, you let them go, you move on. And it seems to be me that you have a very similar system or style in place for yourself.
Yep,
That,
totally aligned. We're totally aligned.
yeah. John, go ahead. Why don't you take it away? I know I've just stolen the guest for like a full 5 minutes. I'm sorry. I was super excited.
No, it's no problem at all. So, Stephen, obviously it's a catchy phrase, it's a catchy title. You got tons of experience, but it'd be just a short book if it was just based on what we've just discussed. So what are some like we got about 5 minutes before we got to go for our break. What are like 2 to 3 other real highlights that you want to emphasize that are key parts of the story of the book, Stephen?
Great. Thanks, John. So, the book is not about door knocking per se, right? I use door knocking as a metaphor because how you succeed in, say it this way. In real estate is the way to succeed is to show up in a business that calls for anything but that, right? We're all, as agents, we're all independent contractors with no boss. No one really cares what we do. On the other hand, if you can show up day in, day out, week in, week out, you can have a pretty good career. And yet that's so simple, yet unbelievably difficult. And really the book is, how do you persevere over time in this type of environment? I use door knocking, which is the thing that nobody wants to do, right? What some would say is the hardest thing to do. Most agents build their business other ways. And so I use door knocking as an example of what it takes to persevere all the time and all the things that get in the way, right? The chaos of being in real estate, the overwhelm that comes from all these things to manage. But I would say the biggest thing where people get hung up, and again, the doors are a great example, is this whole need for instant gratification, right? Here we are, the 3 of us on this call, right? We're all in 3 different states, having this like we're in the same room, right? So we're used to having things right now, right? You want a package, you want groceries delivered, boom, click a button, it'll be at our door in 2 hours. But true success, and I think Robert was alluding to this, right? It takes time to really build the business. And door knocking, like most other aspects of real estate, takes time. And so people try door knocking or postcards or cold calling or whatever they're going to do, or open house. They do it for a week or 2, or a month or 2, and it's just not enough time, right? They have no patience for the process to evolve. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I always have to remind myself, and I'd like to share with others, that it just takes time. And that really the joy is to settle in for the journey, right? And just enjoy the process. And things will work out if as long as you stay on the path. And so that's really what the book is about, and that's the journey it goes through.
Just a quick follow-through question before we go for a break, and then I'll throw it back over, and then Robert can ask another question. Is when I think you touched this in one of your prior interviews, I totally agree with you. Most people, don't have the patience, or they don't have a process, or they don't have the financial resources that allow them. But there's a time where something just isn't working. And like what Einstein says, the guarantee of failure is repeating. I forgot precisely what he said, but basically is, if you keep repeating something that failed, don't be surprised that you get the same result. You got any insight about does it just come from the gut when you know that you do have to give up on something?
I mean, that is a great point. I think it's right. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different result. I think that's when you were thinking of. And there is a piece of that, right? There is a balance. How do you know which one is which? Here's what I do know. In real estate, it's not rocket science, right? This business has been around a long time. Door knocking, not anything new. Open house, nothing new. Working a database of people that know, like, and trust you, nothing new. And so if you're going down a proven path and it's not working, one of two things, right? Either A, you just need to give it time, which is what we talked about. Or two, maybe you're doing something along the process that isn't working. It's you. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of ninja selling, which is a big system in real estate. And Larry Kendall, who's from Colorado, and I've met him many, great guy. I remember him saying, don't be the person where the room got lighter because you left. Don't be the Debbie Downer. And it's easy in real estate when things aren't going well to be the person that doesn't bring joy to the room, that causes angst and stress. And so sometimes, right, I mean, I know I've met agents or people, right, who aren't aware of how they're showing up in the world. And so that's true. You could be going to the doors or making your calls, but if you're showing up as greedy, obnoxious, insensitive, only out for your own interest, people can pick up on that. And so it could be the process, but it could be you, or it could be me. I'll speak for myself. So it is a balance.
That's great. We need to go for a break, Robert.
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, when we come back to the Mail Right Show, we'll be going into the second part of the show, and I will be making some observations about the philosophical side of Stephen Ross's comments and digging a little bit into that. But I'm going to end the first part of the show with another quote from another sales trainer: "Your attitude impacts your ultimate altitude," which is a Zig Ziglar saying that is slightly bastardized. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate it. John, Steve, you guys are amazing. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Mail Right Show, where it's episode 293. We're here with the amazing Stephen Ross and the unstoppable Jonathan Dinwood. We are talking about a book called Doors Open When You Knock, which so far to me has felt like both a technical exploration of using door knocking, but as well as a philosophical exploration of that impacts the larger pursuit of any business venture, I would say. So my observations to you, Stephen, is that a lot of what I feel like you've been saying is more about the way that you think about doing business as opposed to the physical way in which you go out and do business. Is that something that you're talking about in the book?
That's very well you picked. You're right on track there. It's like we planned it and we did not, because we just met right before this started.
Okay, so you're talking about philosophy a lot then in your book. You're talking about the concept of what your mindset should be before you walk out the door and knock on a door. Is that somewhat accurate?
Yeah, there's a little of that in there as well. Yeah, there's definitely again, nothing new. Do you have an abundant mentality or a scarcity mentality, and practice of gratitude? Okay,
so let's make this a little personal, since you're the person on the show talking to us directly. When do you still do any door knocking? Is that something in your past? Are you just a writer and a speaker now, or do you still actually practice this?
Still sell real estate. I was knocking on doors right up until COVID in March of last year. I was out for a few weeks in October last year, but I have not been out since. I'm hoping to maybe be out at the second half of this year, get back out and touch people.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're ready. You're getting ready, and here's a couple of things that I feel like I've learned from you today so far. Number one, you, without really pointing it out dramatically, you kind of seem to indicate that you are disciplined about hitting doors at the same time each day, 11 to 2:30, I think is what you said. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. And you had some really good reasons for doing that, because if you're out at the same time, you're going to get some of the same sets of concerns coming from the doors that you're knocking on, which makes you better prepared. Is that would you say that that's true?
That is true. Yeah.
Okay. And so what is your self-talk as you're gearing up? You're awake, the kids are out the door, everything is, set. What is Steve saying to Steve before he walks out the door?
That's really good. So I actually do it in the car on the way to where I'm going. So I don't knock where I live. I drive now. Well, I always have, but I go to certain neighborhoods. And so, but I am very deliberate. I usually, if I, for some reason, missed my meditation in the morning, actually, that's not even true. I mostly meditate sometime in mid-morning, and then I get in my car and I go. And then in the car, I'm not making calls, I'm not returning calls, I'm not checking texts, and I'm not checking emails. It takes me 10 to 20 minutes to get to wherever I'm going. And I'm doing one thing. I'm listening to comedy.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing. Why am I listening to comedy? Because it makes me laugh.
Okay.
It puts me in a good mood, and I'm light and not serious and not significant. And because people they want to have, if I want to bring joy and inspiration in the world, I've got to be joyful and inspired. For me, it's comedy. I can't speak for others, but that puts me, right, it ranges the chemicals in my body. I am wired, I'm ready, right? I get out of the car, I'm laughing, I'm in a good mood, let's go.
Got you. All right. So comedy, John, I think there's something there for you.
Oh, English comedy is the best. So you must listen to some good English. But basically, the concept of door knocking, it's no different. I was interviewing a great guest last week, Robert. Had a prior arrangement, so he couldn't join me, but I was talking to a guest about video, and a lot of agents find it really hard to do video, to put themselves in front. With digital marketing, Robert and myself, we can only get people to show signs to the agent that they might be interested. The agent still has to make that phone call and then make that appointment to see the individual. In the end, it always comes to that face-to-face interaction. So what do you think, because you be honest about in your prior interviews that you're very much an introvert, or you feel you are. What do you think the people that hire you, seeing you, that they like, so they make the decision to hire you, Stephen?
They hire me because they implicitly, well, two things. They implicitly trust me, and they have faith and belief in my capability, right? So they feel I'm competent, and that gets demonstrated in a couple of ways. One, here's the thing, right? If you show up at someone's door year in, year out, that says something, right? As opposed to the one postcard they got, or the one person that knocked on their door one time. So that, going back to what Robert talked about, the multiple touches, my experience, multiple touches face to face has made a huge difference, right? I see someone for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. They feel like they've known me forever. And then, when you're out walking the neighborhoods, and I've because I've knocked on 125,000 doors, I've knocked everywhere. And so my experience in terms of being in neighborhoods and meeting people and understanding migration patterns of where people are moving, why, is really good. And that comes across when people ask me questions about, what's happening in the market, areas they should consider, et cetera.
That's great. Over to you, Robert.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about a much more smaller but mechanical but very important part of your process. So I've always found that the most challenging bit, so you're not going to sell a home when you're sitting on their doorstep with this first knock or second knock or third knock. That's not really your next step into the sale, right? Because you don't have a credit card machine with you or any of those things that many door knockers do. But there's going to be a point in which your sales starts to get made, I feel, when the transference of information happens. That's when they're giving you permission or handing you off their information to you with the intention of having a deeper dialogue. Would you agree with that?
Sure. Yep. Right on board.
Okay. So how can you give me a couple of examples of how that transference might occur, or what you might ask in order to initiate that kind of deeper step into the sales process?
Okay. I mean, we go a couple different ways. So I'll start with the obvious one, the first two obvious ones. The first one is, if, so you and I, Robert, are connecting. I feel like we're engaged. We're, on the same path. I have a decision. I can just add you to my database and decide I'm going to mail to you a couple times a year, in addition to seeing you at your doorstep.
Right.
I don't really need your permission to do that. That part's
Correct.
kind of obvious.
Right.
But then the next thing is, well, how would I get Robert's email and phone number? That's different. And one of the more natural ways that happens is I'm at the door. You're like, hey, do you know any good sprinkler people? Do you know a painter? Do you know whatever? Right. I'm always asking, is there anything I can help you with? Sure. Half the time people will say, depending on the time of year, hey, do you have a so-and-so? Great. What's your email and your phone number? I'll send it to you. So now I have their information. Right. Or someone says, hey, I was curious about some other piece of property or some other question or something about the market. Great. How would you like me to send that to you? You want me to text you, call you, or email you?
Gotcha.
Email. Well, here, you know what? Here, take my email, but take my phone number because I'm not always on my email. So send me a text after you send it. Okay, great. Now I have their info. You'd be surprised when I look back through my database of all the people whose info I have. They just naturally gave it to me. They either called me for something, texted me something, emailed me for something, right? Or I was at their door and we had a conversation and it just naturally came up for them to give me their information. It's always natural for me.
Well,
Robert,
yeah,
we need to wrap up the podcast. Hopefully Stephen can stay on for another 10, 15 minutes for bonus. Can you stay on, Stephen?
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to wrap up the podcast part of the show, Robert.
Yes, sir. So when we come back, ladies and gentlemen, I will be probably opening up a second dialogue about the concept, because Steve is saying natural. And I'm a lifetime sales trainer, Steve, and that's what I used to do before I got into digital marketing. And one of those things that frustrates me is sometimes salespeople get so far down the journey, they don't remember the books that they've read and the things that they've done. But in this little dialogue, you've actually used 2 or 3 professional sales techniques that I don't know that you're calling out. So I'm going to call those out and illustrate to our audience probably why you want to always be reading books, why you always want to be learning, why you want to be on top of your technique, because it becomes natural, just like Stephen said, and you forget that you learned it at some point. So without any further ado, please stay tuned for us. You can find us on the Mail-Right YouTube channel. Stephen, if somebody wants to look you up or reach out to you related to your book, which is Doors Open When You Knock, and you can find that book on Amazon, how would you like them to get in touch with you?
DoorsopenwhenyouKnock.com. There's
.com.
Yep, that's the easiest way to get hold of me.
Okay, lovely. And John, if anybody wanted to talk to you about some digital lead generation, they're a new agent and they're looking for some ideas about how they might generate a little bit of business for themselves, how would they reach out? How would they touch base with you?
Thanks for that, Robert. It's really easy. Just go to the mail-right.com website. You can book a free half-hour session with me. It's on the About Us page, or you can phone or email me. It's all on the website, Robert.
Lovely. And ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who might be interested in learning more about SEO, you can always go to inboundrem.com. My information is on my website. We really appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you the next time, except for those of us that join us on the YouTube channel for the bonus content. And out. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the video version of the Mail Right Marketing Show. We're here with Stephen Ross and Jonathan Dinwood, and we are talking about Stephen's book, Doors Open When You Knock. Before we went to our final break and moved into the bonus content, Stephen had said that the conversation happens fairly naturally, and he had illustrated a couple things. One, giving information that might be valuable to the person that he's speaking to, such as a service provider that they want to get in touch with. But when he illustrated his point, he actually used what is called an alternate choice assumed close in the description of his story. That is when you come to somebody and you give them 2 alternate choices, and if they select either one, they're moving forward with your sales conversation or they're buying something. This technique has been around for 125 years in the printed form, but I read it for the first time with a guy by the name of Tom Hopkins. That's who I read it through. So, which is a sales trainer from the 80s. I guess my point is, Stephen, is that you are a writer. You're an introvert. How much do you read?
All the time.
Okay. And what do you read?
Everything. I read biography, I read history, read some philosophy, I read stuff on I don't read as many books, but I read stuff on, obviously the stock market, the real estate market and the economy, for the real estate business. And so I read a variety of things, but mostly my inquiry is about, right, what is it to be human? What is it to be fulfilled? What is it to have a life that makes a difference? I mean, that's what interests me the most. Okay.
Eckhart Tolle, The Power Now.
Yep. Got that. Read that. That's the only one of his that I've read. I have his other books, but that's the only one I've actually read.
Beautiful. So I guess my point, John, and you can weigh in here too if you want, but and I know that just so that you know, Stephen, for John, it's a little bit of a tougher proposition because he's dyslexic, so he might not be a power reader. He might be a power listener, but one way.
It's my audio books.
My proposition, my supposition here is that, and I am of course going to suggest that somebody read your knowledge, your truth that you've put out there, which is Doors Open When You Knock. I've enjoyed the conversation with you. I think you have something immensely valuable to either remind people of or let them see for the first time, in the sense of door knocking on doors mixed with a good philosophy to get out there and do it. But I also think that as we close the show down, that I feel like we don't talk about this, John, very much. But one way or the other, I think that everybody in every career should be a lifetime learner of knowledge that will help them personally and professionally. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I just got a couple quick questions for my own nosiness. You mentioned in previous interviews and the first half of this that you were in the corporate world. I think you said it was a medical startup. And I think you mentioned in previous interviews that you got totally fed up with American corporate. But you also mentioned you had a wife with 2 children, 1 coming, I think. How did that conversation go with your wife about you giving up a regular paycheck and going on commission only? And secondly, you mentioned that you had a coach. So I presume that you had some money in the bank. I think it's really important to either have a very supportive partner or to have at least 3 to 6 months money in the bank. So I'm intrigued. First of all, how did that conversation go with your wife? And secondly, do you think it's really important to have a coach? And to have some funds in the bank when you're going down this road?
Yeah. Okay, great. So these are perfect. Well, it's funny, when I did the startup, my first son was being born. So I left, I was a consultant for Ernst & Young. So I had a very prestigious job, had prestigious clients. I was going to do a medical startup. So that, I already went through this. I mean, that was not easy once. And then when I did the second time, right. So we're not married anymore. That's not why we're not married anymore. She's a lovely woman, and bless her soul for putting up with me for all those years, because it was hard. And she probably, looking back, there was times where she was very supportive, and times she's like, can't you do something else? But I think you do got to have a partner. You're 100% right. If she was against it and I was fighting it the entire time, it's not going to go well. That just makes it really hard. And then the second thing you said was about having a coach. I couldn't always afford one-on-one coaching in the beginning, but I could afford. I got whatever I could afford, and it was absolutely. I still have that coach. I obviously now train and advise others. But I still have the same real estate coach, because I still need someone in my corner pushing me, challenging me. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing, having money in the bank, it helps. It definitely helps. It keeps you from being desperate, keeps you objective, to always be putting your client's interest first. And I'll tell one on myself, it's, when I moved to Colorado at the end of 2008, right, the economy was in the toilet, right? Things were bad. Things were very bad. And we moved here, and I knew no people. I knew nothing about selling property in Colorado. I'd been in business 4 years, and I had some savings, but not a ton. And I didn't, and the world around me was very scary, and there was no certainty. And so I went and got a job waiting tables at night. So I'd sell real estate. I'd knock on doors during the day, and I'd go wait tables at night. And that was unbelievably humbling for many, many reasons. But the thing that I was very clear about, I'm a real estate agent. I'm hustling on the side just to make sure I have some extra cash for some basic necessities. There was no plan B, right? I'm still in plan A. I just want to make sure I could put food on the table, so I don't need to convince someone to buy a house in a terrible market that might not be the right decision for them. So having money, or if you need to create a side hustle, make it a side hustle. It is not plan A. It is a side hustle just to help kind of grease the way along.
Yeah, so if Robert doesn't mind, I've got a follow-through question to you. Yeah. So, you've also in your interviews remarked that you wanted, and you have been very successful in the real estate, but you never wanted to build a large team. And in your interviews, you stated you don't think it by your own example, that it's necessary. And I agree with you, but it's a message that's not expressed that often. It's seen as the next step up. Can you expand your view around this? Because it's not expressed that often.
No, it's not. And by the way, I'm not saying that my view is the right view and everyone else's is wrong. So I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is most people, let me say it this way. I know many agents, handful of agents who have big teams and are very good at running those teams. And what it takes to run those teams and perform at the levels they're performing at, totally different skill set than what it takes to run a real estate advisory practice, which is what I have. And there's nothing wrong with they're doing. And I also think there's nothing wrong with I'm doing. I have a lot less problems. I don't have employees. I don't have agents. I don't have any of those. I mean, I got into real estate so I could serve my clients and be home every night and raise my kids. And many agents who are in the middle, which is that's who I'm talking to, they have this team thing as something they should do, when really they just, truth be told, would rather have their own advisory practice and build a good base of clients, serve them well, and have a life and not worry about or develop the skill set that's required. They may not have the skill set that's
the
required.
reason I think you put that really well. The reason why I brought it up is that also I've known a few agents that were excellent individual in small power teams, as I call them, but then they felt that they had to build a much larger organization and it's imploded. It's caused them a lot of aggro, a lot of financial stress, a lot led to divorce, led to a lot of problems for them. And I think what you just said is well put, because I'm not attacking. I just think it's a totally different kind of skill set, isn't it? Would you agree with that?
Totally, right? And I know my lane. I'm in my lane. I'm not here to run a big team. That's not my lane. And right. And so for the agents you're talking about, right, if they have a great business and they're good at managing a small team and producing, why in the world would you want to go take on something where you're really going to be a business manager, right? It's totally different. But people don't stop and think about it that way. I mean, you would know right from the folks you're talking to.
Over to you, Robert.
So, Stephen, I'm sorry, I've done this a couple different times. I mean, in this particular show, but my feeling is that in digital marketing, what you're doing is you're identifying a niche, and then you're speaking specifically to that niche. I love your niche, man. I try to have the same niche. Like, I try to work only from 11 to 6, and I own a business and I have 20 people that work for me, and I still manage to figure that out. But one of the ways that I figure that out is I absolutely don't have an interest in taking on 10, 20, 30, 40 clients a month. I try to take on 4. I limit it because my lifestyle is more important to me than whatever the next level of money is. Like, I just, whether it's $1 million, $2 million, it doesn't really matter. I don't really care. Is that kind of what you're saying? Like, I feel like that's what you said.
It's exactly what I'm saying. That is chapter 1 of the book, right? It's just, what is your sweet spot, for you, and you meaning the person listening.
Right.
And that we all don't need, well, none of us need $1 million to live, right? That's, we don't need, nothing wrong if that's your goal. Totally fine. We don't need it. And so really there's a balance between what you just said, Robert. What is the lifestyle that really fulfills you? And what type of effort do you need to put in to make that happen? And can you do that effort without killing yourself? Can you do that effort in 30 hours a week, 25 hours a week, or whatever it is on average, and then have a really great life? And in real estate, you absolutely can do that.
It is one of my favorite things about real estate, guys, is that technically if you run across somebody like you, Stephen, and you find a solid way to get those new clients into your pipe and a great way to nurture your old ones, technically you can do the business of real estate part-time and make a full-time living without a shadow of a doubt. And that would be that's one of the few things that could appeal to me personally and get me out there and do real estate in general, is the fact that it's possible in that career. Like, you could work 4 hours a day and probably still make $500,000, running your business the right way, reading books like yours, doing a lot of listening, fine tuning and figuring things out. But I think it's possible. Would you agree with that?
Totally. I totally agree. And I would just say, back to one of my first comments, it takes time, right? I mean, I've spent 17 years in this business, and there's not a year that's gone by where I'm not reading, studying, in groups, learning from other agents. It's easier to do, and I say part-time in air quotes because I don't feel like, even though I'm splitting my time, but I've got a lot of time out in experience, so that none of this is new to me. And so
okay.
all I'm saying is, for a newer agent, look, you're going to have to put in more time. You're not going to be able to do it at 3 or 4 hours a week. I mean, you're just not.
No, that's so true. Well, we need to wrap it up, Robert.
Copy that. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to the Mail Right, the bonus edition. All of us have already, through the podcast edition, illustrated ways to get in touch with us. So we're just going to go through it one more time. Stephen, the last time that we asked you, you wanted people to go to doorsopenwhenyounknock.com. Is that still the case?
That's it.
All right. And Jonathan, you wanted people to go to the mail-right.com show. And if they were interested in a consultation,
and also there's almost 250 interviews from people like Stephen. If you want to blast through them in a weekend, I think you get extensive education by just listening to all our guests, Robert.
I couldn't agree with that more. And for those of you who are on YouTube watching this particular show, do us a favor. Check out some of the amazing episodes that we have on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up, give us a like, give us a comment. We deeply appreciate it. Jonathan works his butt off trying to give you guys the best guests, the best information as humanly possible.
Thank you for saying that, Robert. I wouldn't say work my butt. I try and be consistent, just like Stephen. But I've learned an enormous amount from our guests. And if you're looking or you're looking for different ways of being more successful, it's totally free. And literally, we've interviewed together some of the best people in the real estate industry, haven't we, Robert?
We really have. I can't disagree with that. We've had an epic run and spoken to some amazing souls and minds, and I feel blessed that I accepted the show so long ago. Stephen, if you've ever read a book called Say Yes, I followed some principles there, and that's how I'm here in the podcast today. I said yes to a strange offer that came through my email. And here I am years later, hundreds of episodes later, and I've met all these fantastic people because originally I said yes to an offer that somebody made me. Anyway, thanks so much, everybody. We appreciate it. We'll catch you on the next time.
See you later.